Hi, everybody. I'm Hondo Carpenter. I'm your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer for Sports Illustrated and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. Joined now by my very good buddy. He is Aiden Champion. Aiden, I always call you O'Connell. I apologize about it. Even the other day at lunch, me, you, and Michael France sitting there talking. I called like twice, I think. How stupid of me. Too many Aidens in my life, but he is our great deputy editor and publisher of all of our Raiders coverage at the Las Vegas Raiders, coverage on Sports Illustrated. You guys read him. He writes 3 articles a day, 21 articles a week about your Raiders. He's been there in the stadiums with me covering the team. He's at the combine with me. Inside, outside, he knows your Raiders, and it's good to have him on each and every week. So, Aiden, good to have you, bud. Thanks for joining us again.
Thank you for having me, sir. I'm glad you think of me more than, as one of you out there said, just one of Hondo's buddies from Michigan who writes in his basement, doesn't attend games. I thought that was funny. But
somebody said that?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, since I've seen you in the locker room with me at games, Kansas City and everywhere else, good to have you. Let's dig in a little bit because I think this is super important and very, very important, as a matter of fact. I have said many times, let's look at Devontae and Maxx. I think Devontae is hands down the best wide receiver in the National Football League. People can say, look at his diminished numbers, and I think that's completely fair. But when you put him in context of what he's had to work with, last year, even on a very down year, still over 100 catches, still over 1,000 yards. But he's also a guy, who's been in the league over a decade. He's been here. He's been around. I still think he's in his prime. I don't think he's going downward, but he's certainly closer to the end of his career than the beginning. Then you come to a Maxx Crosby, who I think is, if not the best defensive lineman, I think you can make an argument he's 1A or 1B. I think he's 1A, but I think you could make a argument for TJ Watt as well, and I think that would be a fair argument. But I think he's the best defender in the NFL. And even though he's a prime player, I don't think he's hit his best. I think his best is way ahead of him. If this team was rebuilding, I don't think Devontae would be here. But if they were rebuilding, I still think Maxx would because he's got so much more left. Barring injury, I think he's got a long time left. Let's talk about Maxx. Is it disrespectful of me to say that about Maxx, that he still has reached his prime? I think he can get better, and he tells us that. He told me that.
Correct. And it's not disrespectful. I mean, he's already done so much. I think you're just saying he can be that much better. And, I think the biggest thing about that with Maxx is the reason that is because he hasn't proved to us that he can't get better. He's gotten better every single year. Somehow seems to top it. Career highs in sacks with 14.5 last year, tackles for loss, second year in a row he led the league. And I think this year, a big reason he's going to reach an even higher level is because you've got Christian Wilkins in the middle now. And, Maxx isn't going to be the only focus on the D line this year.
Malcolm Koonce
on the opposite end.
I mean, if he plays like he did the last 8 games of last year, they can't just ignore him and put one guy over there. I mean, Koonce playing at a high level makes Crosby better.
Exactly, and then throw Wilson in there. However they're going to use him. I know they used him a lot in the middle last year.
Which they're going to continue this year.
Yeah, and I don't know what the reps will look like yet, but that's just another one. Add him to the mix, and you've got so many more pieces that you got to focus your attention on.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch him a lot. I want to talk to you about something that I've mentioned a couple times, but I would like your analysis on this because I think it's fair. And you might not. That's fine. I'm willing to live with that. But when I look at this Raider team, and you've been there with me, you've been in locker rooms, you know what this team does. There's it used to be long before you were born, that it was 6 weeks of training camp. I think at one point it was 8 weeks and 5 games, and now it's 3. And most your starters probably won't even play in game 3, and very little in 1 and 2 practices. There isn't two-a-days. There isn't that physicality. And then you add to, they're adding a new scheme, and it's not just a new scheme, it's a new blocking style. I have said I think it's going to take a couple games for this team to gel because there's so much change. Now I expect them to win week 1. I don't expect them to win week 2, but I think it's going to be week 3 or 4 before they look like an oiled machine. And I've told people I think there needs to be patience, because when you're adding this new scheme with all this new footwork, and yep, they installed it all during OTAs and minicamp, but there still wasn't physicality. To me, I think I'm preaching patience. I'm not preaching a season of it. I'm preaching the first, 2 or 3 games to let them get that down. Do you feel like I'm making excuses, or do you think I'm being realistic?
No, you're absolutely being realistic. Anytime you have a new look team like this, a new regime, you got to be patient. Nothing's going to click overnight like that. Um, I haven't decided yet what I think will be the outcome of week 1. Really hard to tell because, this Chargers team did get better this offseason.
They have new systems on both sides of the ball.
Correct. I did say on the last episode that I was on that, I don't know what Chargers team will get here, but it's not going to be the one they hung 63 points on. You can count on that. But going back to, your point, say they start 0-2. Don't hit the panic button. That Ravens game is going to be very tough. It's, I don't think it'd surprise any of us if they lose that one with, the team that finished with the best record in the AFC, or the whole AFC last year. Reigning MVP, Lamar Jackson. They had Derrick Henry. I think the difference between this regime and the last regime, the last 2 under McDaniels, his first year, they start 0-3. Last year, they start 1-3. Every game afterwards, McDaniels comes out, doesn't really have an explanation as to what the heck went wrong out there. It was just the same thing week after week. Yep, that's on me. That's on me. That's yep, got to be better. AP is gonna, hold people accountable. He's not. I don't see him as the punishing type. He wants his players to flourish, but he'll hold you accountable, and he's not gonna settle for BS. So then you look at the next stretch there after, say, they start 0-2. You've got Panthers in week 3, who worst team in football last year. Browns, that'll be a tough one, but it's at Allegiant Stadium. I think they'll be riding the momentum of that Panthers game. And then you got the Broncos, who you haven't lost to since 2019. So I think that will be premature.
Yep. I think it's a 4-1 start. I think that they get Los Angeles. I think they fall at Baltimore. And then let me just say something to you. You said I wouldn't be surprised if they lost. I would be surprised if they won, because you have a potential Super Bowl team reigning in, MVP type in Lamar. They haven't done the holistic changes on scheme. They're more ready. I'm going to tell you this. I think the Raiders next year, because they won't be changing everything, at least that's a fair, probably prognostication, will be better next year, even with a harder schedule at the beginning, just because they're not going to be the ones, if it's harder, doing that. To me, though, I think you nailed it. Patience is the name of the game. And when they hit Allegiant with the Browns, I think because that's a very good defense. I'm not impressed with their offense at all. But with that defense, I think that offense is going to – some games your defense is going to win you. And when I say win you, I'm not talking about 2 touchdowns, although that happens with the Raider type defense from time to time. But they're going to hold you in it like they did last year with Minnesota, and your offense has to get points. Then there's going to be some where your defense is very good, their offense is very good, and your offense is going to have to go win a game too. That Browns game is more like that. To me, they're going to have to go out there and score and against a good Browns defense because their defense is good and so is the Raiders, and it's going to be who can score. I think that game to me is going to tell you about where the offense is.
Absolutely. That whole stretch, that whole 3-game stretch right there after weeks 1 and 2, I think it's going to be definitely going to be one of the more crucial points of their season.
All right, I got to get to something here. You wrote an article last week that I thought was phenomenal. Great job on your part. You wrote an article about who should be the team captains. And I'd like to talk to you about it because I'm old school. I like 4 captains. I just, too many, then it's, you get to be a captain and you get to be, it's like watching an episode of Oprah. You get a car, you get a car. I wish I could remember who that was. It Dane Cook, the comedian that did that special on Oprah Winfrey? You get a car, you get a car. I don't remember who, but it was some comedian. Somebody showed me a clip of it. It was hilarious. I don't like too many. To me, it's Devontae, Max, Spillane, and then Daniel or AJ.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, you think that's important to throw the special teams guys in there?
Well, I'm going to tell you this. On some teams, it's super important. And because that means a lot. And I've seen guys almost get depressed because they weren't a captain. Then I've seen teams that are like, hey, we're good. Doesn't matter who the captains are. We're all on the same page. I would be fine if they did those 4. I mean, I think Christian Wilkins needs to be in there, but at some point, you can't have 3. I mean, if you're going to have 4, you can't have 3 defenders. You want your quarterback there. It's going to be a vote of the players. And I always tell everybody, you know who the players want. I remember covering a team one time and the quarterback was not voted as a captain. And everybody knew trouble in paradise. Then I've watched teams when the backup got voted captain and not the starter. So, I mean, you're going to have Aiden or Gardner. I think it's going to be Aiden. I'm very confident it's going to be Aiden. Devontae. And then if you go Max and Spillane, if you go 5, then Max, Spillane, and Christian. If you go 5, you might as well go 6 and throw Daniel Carlson in there. Do you go 3 and then add a floating 4th one every week? Let the team vote on who's going to be captain this week. So those are my opinions. I want to hear yours.
It's all very good questions. And, McDaniels had 9 captains last year. That's a bit too much because, like you said, it's like, just throwing them out at that point. And then
it's 20% of your game day roster.
Exactly. And then at that point, it doesn't hold the same meaning. To be a captain is a huge honor. And when you got 9 guys, that, it kind of diminishes what it means. But I'm very interested with if they do name a quarterback. I said in my article that I predict Aiden to win the starting spot, and I do predict him to be a captain. But I could also see a scenario where maybe they don't choose a quarterback as a captain. But AP, as we know, is very high on Aiden. I'd be surprised if he didn't decide on Aiden as one of his captains. But I talked about some guys. First off, I'd agree with you that I think your guarantees are Max, Devontae, Spillane. Did you say AJ Cole or just Carlson?
I said Cole or Carlson.
Okay. So I would say both.
I think you're going to have Christian in there, and I'm going to tell you why. And that tells you how good he is. He may be a first-year Raider, but those guys immensely respect him. He is respected all over that team. So I think your shoe-ins are Devontae, Max, Christian, Spillane. I I think close to a shoe-in, but not, but close, is Aiden, or if Gardner beats him out, Gardner. So then you got 5. Then, okay, do you go to 6? But at some point, you just can't have you get a captainship. You get a it just doesn't even make sense to me anymore. And here's what people don't understand, Aiden, is I've had people all the time say, well, who cares? It's just an honor. You go out and say heads or tails. That's not the story at all. Captains are the ones that a lot of times are relied upon to do discipline. They're the ones that have to set the example of work, because they'll go to the coach and say, Coach, listen, the guys are tired. They need a break. And if those guys are your hardest workers, then the coaches will trust them. I know of captains who've walked in and said, you got to cut this guy. He's not good in the locker room, whatever. I know of captains who've walked in and said, Coach, you're wrong. And you need to discipline, or you don't need to discipline. I mean, good captains are very hard to find. You find winning teams, you find good captains, and fans sometimes don't know that 90% of stuff they do is behind the scenes.
Correct. And like you said, self-esteem is a big thing too. Guys who, might deserve it, who don't get it, they're going to question where they stand on this team, especially for new guys. And I think my case for Christian Wilkins is he was a captain in Miami. I feel like that would very much deplete someone if you take that away from them when they join a new team. It'd be one thing if he's only played 3 years, but he's a solid veteran in this league. Been a borderline Pro Bowler. Definitely think Christian Wilkins should get the nod.
Borderline Pro Bowler his whole career, not as of late, because there's been no borderline. I know that you knew that. I want to just say that for the new people who maybe don't know you and say, what is he talking about? Borderline since the day he got in the league, not borderline as of late. I know you knew that.
Right.
All right. I want to switch to one other topic that I think is really important. And the topic, and I think you have to discuss it, but this team is poised. This team understands that there's a bullseye on them. This team understands the players got AP the job. They went out, they lobbied for him, they wanted him. I think it's fascinating. The way this team is setting itself up for success, and the way this team is taking on its back. We got AP the job. Now we got to go play and prove we were right. I love the personal accountability the players are taking for speaking out on AP. They're not putting it on AP. They're putting them on themselves. How much do you like that?
I like it a lot. Whether or not AP was going to get this job, there was going to be a chip on this team's shoulder as to, what they were going to look like this year, with so many guys with so much potential who really stood out at the end of the year last year, and guys who, going back to the captain talk, there's several players who could be captains on the team, leaders of this team, voices. And it's funny to say that they've got a bullseye on their back, because I think one big thing they have going for them is, at the same time, they kind of are flying under the radar in the sense that they play in the same division as the back-to-back Super Bowl champs. The talk every offseason, everyone likes to think that someone's going to knock them off for the AFC West crown. Hasn't happened in a long time. So, I think it benefits them, and they love flying under the radar. They're always talking about that. Yeah, don't mention us. We don't want to be talked about. That's fine by us. So.
I had one of the players tell me the other day, Hondo, you're talking too good about us. Let us surprise some people.
Yeah.
I said, okay. Have I said anything that's not truthful? No. Then that's my job. Yeah, well, we'd like to fly under the radar a little bit. I thought that was kind of funny. I thought that was kind of cool, and I appreciated their heart and their interest. Okay, Aiden, tell everybody where they can find you on X, please.
You can follow me on X at champion_Aiden. Looking forward to talking to more of you.
Yeah, and you're doing a great job, and you got some great articles coming. I'll tell you what, as training camp gets closer now, you could just feel it. You can sense it. There's a sense of excitement with this team. That's a lot of fun. Aiden, thanks for joining us. Stay on the line. I want to talk to you real quick for a minute. Thank you, everybody, for paying attention. This has been the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you so much.